You know, it's rather curious how we approach life as though it were some great puzzle, something that must be deciphered, conquered, and finally arranged into perfect order. From the moment we are children, we're told, figure it out. Figure out who you are. Figure out what you want to do. Figure out what life means, as if existence itself were a crossword to be solved before we die. But what if the very act of trying to solve life is what makes it so confusing? What if, in all our effort to understand, to define, to control, we've missed the point entirely? You see, we live in a world obsessed with purpose, obsessed with meaning, obsessed with answers. We have this deep, unspoken anxiety that if we don't find a reason for it all, somehow it will all be meaningless. And so we struggle, we strive. We build religions, philosophies, empires of thought, each promising to finally reveal what it's all about. And yet the harder we search, the more life slips through our fingers. Because life is not a riddle waiting to be solved. It is a song waiting to be sung. Imagine for a moment that you are listening to music. You don't listen to a piece of music just to get to the end. If that were the purpose, the best musicians would simply play the final note. No, the beauty of music lies in the unfolding, in the dance between silence and sound, tension and release. The joy is in the journey itself, and life, my dear friends, is precisely the same. It is not a race from birth to death, from ignorance to enlightenment. It is a melody, constantly evolving, constantly changing, forever expressing itself. But we've been conditioned to believe otherwise. We treat life as though it were an obstacle course, a series of challenges we must overcome before we can finally rest. We say things like, once I get there, I'll be happy. Once I have the job. Once I meet the right person. Once I fix myself. Once I figure it out. But there never comes. For as soon as you reach one summit, another appears in the distance. It is like climbing an endless mountain, always chasing the horizon. And what we forget in our desperate ascent is that the horizon was never meant to be reached. It was meant to be admired. So I say, stop trying to solve life. Stop trying to decode its secret meaning as though the universe were hiding some great cosmic punchline from you. Because, you see, life is not something you grasp, it's something you allow. It's not a problem to be fixed, it's an experience to be felt. Have you ever watched a child play? They don't ask, what does this mean, or what's the point? They simply play, completely absorbed in the moment, lost in the rhythm of their imagination. They laugh, they fall, they cry, they start again. For them, life is not a question, it's an adventure. But somewhere along the way, we lose that innocence. We trade curiosity for certainty. We begin to believe that every event must have a purpose. Every feeling must be explained. Every experience must fit into the story of me. And so we live in constant tension between what is and what we think should be. We divide the world into right and wrong, success and failure, good and bad. We cling to pleasure and run from pain. We forget that the dance requires both the dark and the light. You cannot have a melody of only high notes. You cannot have a painting made of only bright colors. Life, too, must include its shadows. When I say life is a mystery to be lived, I mean that it is something to be entered into, not analyzed from the outside. You must be in it, like a wave is in the ocean. The wave doesn't try to understand the sea. It simply moves as part of it, rises and falls in harmony with its motion. You are that wave, and all your attempts to control, to separate, to explain yourself as distinct from the ocean are illusions. We speak as if we came into this world, but the truth is we came out of it, like leaves from a tree, like waves from the sea. You are not a stranger here. You are not a visitor trying to make sense of something foreign. You are the universe, playing the game of being human for a while. And when you understand this, not as an idea, but as a direct experience, you stop asking life to behave. You stop demanding that it make sense, because you see it already does. Look at the stars. Look at the movement of clouds. Look at the way the wind dances through the trees. None of it is trying to prove anything. None of it is anxious about where it's going, and yet it all unfolds in perfect harmony. The same intelligence that moves the galaxies also beats your heart, breathes your lungs, grows your hair. And yet you worry about what's next, about who you should become, about whether you're doing it right. There is no doing it right. There is only being it fully. So perhaps instead of asking, what is the meaning of life, we might ask, what is life asking of me right now? And the answer invariably is, be here, completely. Because when you are truly here, when you are no longer chasing the future or rearranging the past, something extraordinary happens. The noise quiets, the confusion dissolves, you begin to see that everything you were searching for was never hidden. It was always right here, whispering in the silence between your thoughts. Life does not reveal itself to those who demand explanations. It reveals itself to those who listen. And listening, real listening, is an act of surrender. It's the willingness to be surprised, to not know, to open your heart to the infinite without trying to measure it. So let us begin, not with an answer, but with a question. Not a question to be solved, but to be lived. What if life is not happening to you, but as you? You see, when we begin to sense that life is happening as us, something very gentle but profound takes place. The walls between me and the world begin to soften. You start to notice that what you call your thoughts are not entirely your own. They arrive like visitors from nowhere, forming clouds and passing away again. They come, they stay for a while, and then they drift off into silence. And if you watch closely, you'll see that the same is true of your moods, your desires, even your sense of identity. They rise and fall like the tide. So who is it that claims ownership of all this? Who is the thinker of your thoughts, the doer of your deeds? That's the funny thing. When you look for that person, the controller, the little man behind the eyes, you never quite find him. There are sensations, there are thoughts, but no permanent owner. The self, that beloved fiction we defend with such ferocity, begins to melt like mist in the morning sun. Yet rather than being terrifying, this discovery is liberating, because once you see there is no fixed me to protect, there is no need for struggle. You can move freely, like water flowing around stones, responding to each moment as it comes. Imagine the way a dancer moves with music. She doesn't first analyze every note and then decide which way to step. She feels the rhythm, lets it guide her body, becomes the movement itself. Life invites us to dance in precisely that way, to trust the music instead of trying to conduct it. But we are so addicted to control that we hardly know how to trust anymore. We grasp at certainty as if uncertainty were death itself. We say, I need to know where I'm going, I need to be sure. Yet in the grand scheme, you have never really known. You didn't decide to be born. You don't know when you will die. And the most important events of your life, love, discovery, transformation, have always arrived unexpectedly. So why this obsession with making life predictable? Why this fear of the unknown? Because the unknown exposes the truth that we are not in charge, and the ego trembles at that thought. It wants to be captain of the ship, even though it has no idea where the ocean ends. Let go, not as a command, but as an experiment. For a moment, feel what it's like to relax your inner grip, to stop steering. You will find that life carries you. The breath breathes itself, the heart beats by itself, the earth spins through space without your permission. Everything moves perfectly well without your constant supervision. And when you surrender to that flow, an extraordinary lightness enters your being. You begin to laugh, sometimes softly, sometimes uncontrollably, at the sheer absurdity of having taken yourself so seriously. You see that the cosmic joke is on all of us. We've been pretending to be separate, struggling to find what we never lost. For what is it you truly seek? Peace, happiness, meaning, all these words point to one thing: the feeling of being at home in the universe. And how could you not be? You are made of the same stars you gaze upon. You are the same energy vibrating in the wings of a butterfly and in the pulse of a supernova. We speak of finding our purpose, but maybe purpose is not something we find. It's what naturally radiates when we stop resisting our own existence. The flower doesn't have a mission statement. It simply opens when the sun rises. Likewise, when you stop striving to be anything other than what you already are, purpose flowers of its own accord. It expresses through your laughter, your compassion, your quiet presence. You don't do it, it does you. Have you ever stood before the sea at dusk, when the sky is painted in dissolving colors, and felt suddenly that you and that vastness are one? No words, no explanations, just the silent recognition that there was never a line dividing observer and observed. That is the taste of truth. It doesn't come through theories or belief systems, but through direct experience, through presence. Presence is not something you practice. It is what remains when you stop practicing everything else. It is the stillness underneath the noise, the quiet awareness that was there before you started searching. And the miracle is that it's never gone anywhere. But the mind, mischievous as ever, keeps whispering, yes, but what should I do next? It wants to turn even presence into a strategy, a method, a means to an end. It says, if I meditate hard enough, if I stay in the moment, perhaps I'll reach enlightenment. Yet that very seeking becomes the barrier. You cannot strive to be effortless. You cannot force yourself to let go. It's like trying to bite your own teeth. So the art is not in doing more, but in noticing the futility of doing. In that noticing, something relaxes. And in that relaxation, a new intelligence awakens. An intelligence not of the head, but of the heart. The heart understands what the intellect cannot. That living is not about arrival. It is about rhythm, about flow, about the unbroken dance of beginnings and endings. Every breath is a small rehearsal for death. You inhale birth. You exhale release. And yet we are terrified of that release, terrified to let go of the breath of control, of identity. But you must let go to live. You must die to every moment so that the next can arrive. And so life is constantly teaching you how to die beautifully, how to dissolve into each instant and be reborn the next. When you begin to see life this way, fear loses its grip, because fear is always rooted in clinging to security, to meaning, to the illusion of permanence. But permanence is not the nature of the cosmos. The nature of the cosmos is play, and you, dear one, are part of that play. You are the cosmic dancer, momentarily disguised as a human being, moving through the rhythm of existence. The tragedy is not that life ends too soon. It's that we spend so much of it resisting the music. So perhaps the invitation is not to master the steps, but to surrender to the beat, to realize that even your missteps, your stumbles, your falls are part of the choreography. Because in the eyes of the infinite, there are no mistakes, only movement, only expression, only life. You know, sometimes people ask me, Alan, how do I find peace? How do I stop this constant restlessness inside? And I tell them, you cannot find peace because you never lost it. What you call restlessness is simply life moving through you, and you're standing in its way. It's like trying to dam a river with your bare hands. You feel the current pressing, pushing, flowing, and you panic, thinking something's wrong. But nothing is wrong. The movement is the beauty. The turbulence is the vitality. The moment you stop fighting the flow, you discover that peace was never the absence of motion, but harmony with it. We are afraid of chaos, but chaos is only the order we don't yet understand. You see, nature never rushes, yet everything happens right on time. The tree doesn't worry about growing. The bird doesn't rehearse its flight. The rain doesn't question where to fall. Only human beings, with our clever little heads, stand apart and say, why is this happening to me? But if you listen closely, life isn't happening to you at all. It's happening as you. You are the process. You are the weather, the tide, the breath of the universe, inhaling and exhaling itself into form. And if you can truly see that, even for a moment, you will laugh, not because life is trivial, but because it is far too magnificent to be taken so seriously. We make seriousness our armor. We think that by being grave, by being in control, we somehow prove our importance. But seriousness is not depth. It's fear wearing a heavy mask. The truly deep person is not solemn. He is free, free enough to laugh at the cosmic joke, free enough to cry without shame, free enough to live without demanding guarantees. Do you remember what it felt like to watch clouds as a child? You didn't analyze their shapes. You simply marveled as they became castles, dragons, faces, and then nothing at all. That is what living as mystery feels like. Every moment is a shape the universe takes before it drifts into another. But we, ever so clever, keep trying to hold one cloud still and say, this is my life, this is who I am. We clutch to definitions, titles, memories, roles, and then we suffer because clouds are not meant to be held. They are meant to pass. When you understand this, loss becomes something sacred. Every ending, every goodbye, every heartbreak is the universe reminding you to unclench your fist, to let life move again. You see, love is not about possession, it's participation. You don't own the people you love, you dance with them. Sometimes the dance is short, sometimes it lasts a lifetime, but every step is complete in itself. We ruin love when we make it another problem to solve, when we demand that it stay still, that it promise forever. But love, like music, only exists while it's being played. And the beauty of a song is not that it lasts, but that it ends. The end gives the beginning meaning. The silence between notes gives the melody its shape. And in the same way, death gives life its depth. Without it, everything would be flat, endless, meaningless repetition. So to truly live, you must also learn how to die. Again and again, in every breath, in every moment of surrender. Not just at the end of your life, but throughout it. Die to your expectations. Die to your stories. Die to the need to make sense of everything. Then, perhaps for the first time, you will actually see what's in front of you. The miracle isn't that there is something rather than nothing. The miracle is that you can experience it, that the vastness of eternity can for a brief instant look out through your eyes and say, ah, so this is what it's like. Do you realize what that means? It means that the universe is playing at being you. Right now, as you listen to these words, the cosmos is exploring one of its infinite possibilities. What it's like to be this person in this body at this time, feeling exactly what you feel. You are not apart from the mystery, you are the mystery looking at itself. And when you grasp this, not intellectually, but in your bones, every act becomes sacred. Washing dishes, walking down the street, feeling rain on your skin. These are no longer chores, but rituals of existence. You realize that enlightenment is not some distant mountain peak. It is hidden in the very ground you stand on, disguised as ordinary life. The Zen masters used to say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. What changes is not what you do, but how you see. When you no longer see yourself as the doer, life becomes effortless. Action flows like breath. You are not trying to live, you are being lived. And this is what I mean by the mystery. It cannot be captured in concepts. The moment you name it, it slips away. The moment you turn it into philosophy, it turns to dust. It can only be lived, and living it means daring to not know, to walk without a map, to breathe without asking why, to trust the rhythm of things. Yes, sometimes it will hurt, sometimes it will bewilder you, but that too is part of the dance. For even pain, when seen clearly, has its own strange beauty. It awakens you, deepens you, humbles you. Pain says, look, even this is life. Even sorrow is sacred when you stop trying to escape it. For the heart that refuses to break cannot expand. So let your heart break open again and again until there is nothing left but openness itself. That openness is what we call love, not the sentimental kind, not the romantic illusion, but the vast, unconditional acceptance that holds the stars and your tears in the same embrace. Love is the ultimate mystery, and it asks nothing from you except this, to stop resisting its presence. You see, love is not something you find, it's what remains when the walls between you and everything else crumble away. When you stop defending your identity, your position, your story, what is left is love. Not as an emotion, not as a virtue, but as the very fabric of being. But most of us are so terrified of dissolving that we never allow ourselves to love fully. We cling to control because control feels safe. We say, I will love, but only if, or I will open my heart, but only when. And so our love becomes conditional, a transaction of the mind, not a gift of the soul. Real love, like life itself, cannot be negotiated. It has no purpose, no agenda. It simply is. Like the warmth of the sun, it shines because shining is its nature. It doesn't ask who deserves this light. It gives because it cannot do otherwise. And when you begin to love in this way, to live in this way, everything changes. You stop dividing the world into friend and enemy, success and failure, heaven and hell. You see that every opposite is merely two ends of the same movement. Think of a wave. It rises and falls, but both the crest and the trough are the same water. One cannot exist without the other. so too joy and sorrow, gain and loss, life and death, all of them dance together in the eternal rhythm of being. But we, poor creatures of habit, want only the crest. We want joy without sorrow, life without death, growth without decay. We cling to the rising wave, blind to the beauty of its fall. Yet the falling is not tragedy, it is completion. The wave must return to the sea, for that is where it belongs. So when life brings endings, don't resist. When it brings uncertainty, don't flee. When it asks you to surrender, don't bargain. You are being invited to participate in the great mystery, to dissolve into something far vaster than your idea of yourself. And if you listen closely, if you stop for even a moment, you can feel that vastness right now. It hums beneath every sound, glows beneath every form. It is the silent pulse that connects the beating of your heart with the spinning of galaxies. There is no separation. There never was. The division exists only in language, in thought, in the mind's need to label and categorize. But reality itself is seamless, indivisible, like a single breath inhaling and exhaling eternity. You are not a part of it. You are it. Yet the ego whispers, surely not. I am small. I am fragile. I am lost. But the ego is just a story, a collection of memories, desires, and fears, pretending to be a person. And the miracle is, once you see through the illusion, you don't have to destroy it. You can still play the game of being you. You can still enjoy your preferences, your quirks, your individuality, but now you play lightly, like an actor, aware that it's a role. Then life becomes theater, not as a performance to impress others, but as a celebration of form. You can laugh at yourself without shame, cry without despair, love without needing to own. You can dance your part knowing that the play itself is divine. It's like the child who builds sandcastles by the sea. He knows the tide will come and wash them away, but that doesn't stop him from building. He builds joyfully, because the beauty lies not in the permanence of the castle, but in the act of creation itself. The wise live that way. They love, they lose, they create, they destroy, and they smile through it all, because they know the dance continues. To live as mystery is to no longer demand guarantees. It is to say yes to existence in all its colors, the bright and the dark, the sacred and the profane. And perhaps that is the secret we keep missing, that wholeness includes what we reject. The divine includes the devil. The light includes the shadow. The infinite wears all masks, including yours. So stop trying to purify life. Stop trying to fix it. The desire to fix is born from the assumption that something is broken, but nothing is broken. The cracks are where the light comes through. When you stop chasing perfection, you begin to perceive beauty everywhere. In the crooked tree, in the tired face of a stranger, in the quiet imperfection of your own heart. For life does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present. And presence is simple. It's what remains when the noise of striving fades away. It is the moment when you finally stop asking, how should I live, and realize you already are. You can feel it now, can't you? That subtle awareness behind these words. The silence listening to the sound of my voice. That is you, not the personality, not the history, but the silent witness behind it all. And the more you rest as that, the more life unfolds without resistance. The mind will still chatter, the world will still change, but you will be free because you will know that beneath every wave you are the sea, and the sea is never in trouble. When you stop identifying with the wave and remember the ocean, all problems dissolve into play. Sorrow becomes music, death becomes transformation, time becomes rhythm. Then you finally understand life was never something to figure out. It was always something to feel. It was never a riddle, but a romance, an endless courtship between form and formlessness, between what you think you are and what you truly are. And so when you wake in the morning, don't ask, what must I do to fix today? Ask, how shall I dance with it? For life is not waiting for your answers. It's waiting for your participation.
You know, there's something rather amusing about the way we've been taught to talk to God. We approach it as if we're sending a telegram to some distant cosmic emperor who sits on a throne billions of miles away, checking his clipboard to see if we've been good enough to deserve his attention. We kneel down, close our eyes very tightly, fold our hands just so, and then we begin our performance. Dear God, we say, as if we're writing a letter to someone we've never met. I hope you're having a nice day up there. Now, about that thing I wanted... But what if I told you that the whole setup is backwards? What if talking to God has nothing whatever to do with talking to someone else at all? Let me ask you something. When you talk to yourself, do you use words? I don't mean when you're muttering about the grocery list or rehearsing what you're going to say to your boss. I mean in those quiet moments when you're really listening to yourself, when you're trying to figure out what you actually feel about something, what you truly want. In those moments, there's a kind of knowing that happens before words, isn't there? It's more like a recognition, a sensing, a direct awareness of what's going on inside you. Now, here's the curious thing. What we call God, what we might also call the universe, the ground of being, the eternal now, this isn't some separate entity sitting outside of you, checking off items on a list. You see, you are an expression of this whole universe. You're not in the universe like a marble in a box. You are something the universe is doing right here, right now, in the same way that a wave is something the ocean is doing. So when you talk to God, you're not really talking to someone else. You're becoming aware of what you already are. You're tuning in to the fact that this thing you call me is actually the whole cosmos experiencing itself from this particular point of view. Think about it this way. The wave rises up out of the ocean and looks around and says, "My goodness, I'm separate from all this water." But of course, that's nonsense. The wave is water. It's made of water. It moves with the water. When it crashes on the shore, it doesn't die. It simply returns to what it always was, the ocean. We are like that wave. We rise up out of this mysterious source, this ground of all being, and we think we're separate from it. We think we have to shout across some vast distance to get its attention. But you can't be separate from it, because you are it. You are the universe looking at itself through your eyes right now. So what does it mean to talk to God? It means to stop, to be quiet, to listen. You see, we've got the whole thing backwards. We think prayer is about speaking, about making our requests known, about explaining our situation to some divine bookkeeper who might not have noticed what's going on in our lives. But the real art is in the listening, not the speaking. When Jesus went off by himself to pray, he wasn't reciting memorized formulas. He was becoming quiet enough to hear. He was letting go of the noise in his head, all the chatter, all the planning and worrying and rehearsing. He was settling into a deeper silence where something else could speak. And what speaks in that silence? Well, that's the whole mystery, isn't it? You might call it intuition, or guidance, or the voice of God. But what it really is reality itself making itself known to you. It's life showing you what wants to happen next. Let me tell you what happens when most people pray. They come with an agenda. They've already decided what should happen. They've figured out exactly how God should fix their problem, exactly what solution would be best. And then they dress it all up in humble language. If it be thy will, Lord, please do exactly what I've already decided should happen. But this is rather like going to a doctor and saying, I've diagnosed my own condition and prescribed my own treatment. Now please give me what I've decided I need. The doctor might smile and say, perhaps we should examine you first, don't you think? The correct way to talk to God is to come empty. To come not knowing. To come without your list of demands and requirements. To come as pure listening, pure receptivity, pure openness to what is. This is not passivity. This is not. It's something much more alive than that. It's like swimming in a river. If you try to control the water, if you try to force it to flow in a different direction, you'll exhaust yourself and probably drown. But if you relax into the current, if you feel which way it's moving and flow with it, then you discover you can navigate with incredible grace and power. When you sit quietly and stop all your internal chattering, something remarkable happens. At first, you notice all the noise, all the thoughts bouncing around like popcorn in a hot pan, all the worries, the plans, the memories, the fantasies. And your first instinct will be to try to stop them, to push them away, to make your mind blank and pure. But you see, this too is just more doing. It's more controlling. It's more of you trying to force reality to match your idea of how it should be. Instead, simply watch. Watch the thoughts come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. You don't have to do anything with them. You don't have to believe them or act on them or push them away. Just watch. And in the watching, something begins to happen. The thoughts begin to slow down. The chatter begins to quiet. And in that quietness, you begin to sense something else. A presence, an awareness, a sense of being held by something much larger than yourself. This is what Jesus meant when he said the kingdom of heaven is within you. He wasn't talking about some future reward or some place you go when you die. He was talking about this direct awareness of your unity with all that is. This recognition that you are not separate from the source of all life. Now I know what you're thinking. But what about my problems? What about the things I need help with? Are you telling me I should just sit quietly and do nothing while my life falls apart? Not at all. But here's what I am saying. The help you need doesn't come from some external deity who might or might not decide to intervene. It comes from this deeper wisdom that emerges when you get your anxious, controlling little ego out of the way. When you're all wound up in worry, when you're frantically trying to figure everything out, when you're desperately praying for God to change your circumstances, you're like a radio that's jammed with static. The signal is there, but you can't hear it because you're making too much noise. But when you become quiet, when you let go of your agenda, when you stop trying to control the outcome, something amazing happens. Solutions appear that you couldn't have thought of. Opportunities open up that you didn't know existed. You find yourself saying and doing exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment, not because you planned it, but because you got out of your own way and let life flow through you. This is what it means to pray without ceasing, as Paul put it. It doesn't mean walking around all day reciting prayers. It means living in this state of open awareness, this constant listening, this ongoing recognition of your connection to the source of all being. Let me give you an example. Suppose you're worried about money. The usual way of praying about this is to ask God to give you money, to make your circumstances better, to solve your financial problems. But notice what this does. It keeps you focused on the problem. It reinforces the belief that you don't have enough. It makes you feel powerless and dependent on some external force to rescue you. But suppose instead you sit quietly and simply become aware of your breathing. You notice the air moving in and out. You notice that you didn't have to learn how to breathe. Your body just knows. It's been breathing you since the moment you were born, and it will continue breathing you until the moment you die, without any effort or worry on your part. And then you expand that awareness. You notice that your heart is beating, your food is digesting, your cells are doing their incredible dance of life. All of this is happening without any conscious control from you. The intelligence that runs your body is vastly greater than your conscious mind. And this intelligence, this organizing principle, this creative force, it's the same intelligence that spins the galaxies and grows the trees and brings the spring after winter. It's all one thing. And you are not separate from it. You are one of its expressions. When you really feel this, when you sense your connection to this vast creative intelligence, something shifts. You stop feeling like a beggar asking for scraps. You start feeling like what you are, an integral part of this whole magnificent process. And from that place, from that sense of connection and trust, you begin to act differently. You make different choices. You see opportunities you missed before. You find resources you didn't know you had. The money problem might or might not resolve itself immediately, but your relationship to it changes. You stop being paralyzed by fear. You stop making desperate decisions. You start flowing with life instead of fighting against it. This is what Jesus demonstrated over and over again. He didn't stand apart from the Father, begging and pleading. He said, I and the Father are one. He lived from that place of unity. And from that place, the so-called miracles happen naturally, not as violations of natural law, but as expressions of a deeper understanding of how things actually work. Now you might say, but what about gratitude? Shouldn't we thank God for what we have? Of course. But again, we've misunderstood what gratitude really is. It's not about keeping God happy, like a child thanking a parent so they'll get dessert. Real gratitude is simply the recognition of the gift that existence is. Look at this. You are alive. You can see, hear, taste, touch, smell. You can think and feel and experience this astonishing world. None of this is ordinary. None of this is something you earned or deserved. It's pure gift. It's grace. It's miracle. When you really see this, when you really feel the extraordinary nature of the most ordinary moment, a glass of water, a breath of air, the warmth of the sun, gratitude arises naturally. You don't have to manufacture it or perform it. It simply bubbles up from the recognition of how blessed you already are. And this gratitude changes everything. It shifts you from a state of lack to a state of abundance, from fear to trust, from grasping to receiving, and in that state you become a channel for even more life, even more creativity, even more blessing to flow through you. So here's the correct way to talk to God. Sit down. Close your eyes if you like, or leave them open and softly focused. Take a few deep breaths and feel your body relaxing. Notice the thoughts bouncing around in your head, but don't follow them. Just watch them come and go. And then, without words, without any formulas or scripts, simply open yourself. Be receptive. Be listening. Be aware. Notice the silence underneath all the noise. Notice the space in which all experience is happening. Notice that you are aware, and this awareness is not separate from what you're aware of. You might sense a presence. You might have insights bubble up. You might simply feel a sense of peace or connection. Or nothing much might happen at all, and that's fine too. You're not doing this to get something. You're doing it to remember what you are. And then as you go about your day, carry this awareness with you. When you're washing dishes, really wash the dishes. Feel the warm water. Notice the bubbles. Be completely present to this simple act. When you're talking to someone, really listen. Don't plan your response. Don't judge what they're saying. Just be there, fully present, fully open. This is prayer. Not the words you recite, but the quality of your presence. Not the requests you make, but the awareness you bring to each moment. When you live this way, you discover something wonderful. The distinction between sacred and ordinary dissolves. Everything becomes prayer. Making breakfast is prayer. Walking to work is prayer. Listening to a friend is prayer. Because you're no longer separate from the source. You're no longer trying to get God's attention. You're simply being what you are, a unique expression of the divine, a particular way that the universe is experiencing itself. And from this place, when you do speak words of prayer, they come from a different source. They're not demands or bargaining or performance. They're expressions of this deeper awareness. They might sound like, thank you, or help me see clearly, or simply yes. You see, the correct way to talk to God is to recognize that there's no one to talk to. There's only this eternal now, this present moment, this direct experience of being alive, and you are not separate from it. You are it. So stop trying so hard. Stop performing. Stop pretending you're someone you're not, talking to something outside yourself. Just be quiet. Just listen. Just open yourself to what is, and in that openness, you'll find that you're already being prayed through. The universe is speaking itself through you. Life is living itself as you. God, if you want to use that word, is not something you talk to. It's what you are. This is the secret that the mystics have known in every tradition. That the seeker and the sought are one. That the prayer and the prayed to are the same thing looking at itself from different angles. That prayer is not communication between separate beings. but the universe becoming conscious of itself. So the correct way to talk to God is to stop talking and start listening, to stop seeking and start being, to stop performing and start experiencing. And in that simple shift, everything changes. Not because God finally heard you and decided to answer, but because you remembered what you always were, an inseparable part of the whole. Marriage, as we know it, is often a beautiful illusion crafted from fear, a socially sanctioned promise to make love stay. And yet, love, like water, slips through clenched fists. We swear before priests and judges that we will feel the same way forever, that we will keep our hearts fixed like the stars. But the universe doesn't work like that, neither does the heart. We say, I love you, but then we must notarize it, stamp it, file it in legal documents. What was once wild and spontaneous becomes measured, certified, and sealed under watchful eyes. We have turned marriage into a contract, not a dance, a bond of ownership, rather than a celebration of freedom. Most people, when they say, I do, unconsciously mean, you're mine now. That is often where the trouble begins. For while some rare and beautiful unions do thrive in shared commitment, many falter when love becomes entangled with possession. You cannot bind another soul and expect it to remain free, and love above all needs space to breathe if it is to sing. Falling in love is divine madness. It is irrational, uncontrollable, and glorious. You don't rise into love, you fall. There is something fundamentally risky about it, something sacred. Because to love is to surrender, to give up control. To fall is to say, here I am, do what you will with me. Sensible people don't fall in love. They calculate, they measure, they protect. But the moment you fall in love, you are no longer in control. That is why it is mad. And in that madness, there is a higher sanity. Now here's where the real trouble begins. We try to capture the mystery of love and lock it in a legal cage. We go before judges and priests, and in the name of God, the state, and sometimes even the police, we swear to feel a certain way forever. Can you imagine? We take something as wild and unpredictable as falling in love, and we try to make it permanent, binding, respectable. It's as if love isn't real unless it's signed, sealed, and witnessed by vicars and attorneys. And so this lightning bolt from the sky, this mad surrender of the soul, is converted into a contractual obligation, a legal performance. You're no longer dancing, you're following choreography. And so the sacred becomes rehearsed. Spontaneity gives way to strategy. You keep little lists of things to remember, the right words, the right gestures, the right timing. You are now managing love. You are working at it. And the more you work at it, the less it is there. Love, which was once a leap of faith, has now become a performance under contract. And in that effort to keep it, to secure it, we strangle it. It retreats quietly, respectfully behind the curtains of duty and obligation. Marriages don't always fail with drama. Most collapse quietly under the weight of our attempt to control what was never meant to be controlled. The real tragedy is not that love disappears, it's that we pretend it hasn't. We convince ourselves that if we just act loving enough, if we go through the motions, the feeling will catch up. But that is not how the heart works. We send flowers, we write notes, we plan dinners, but not from desire, from duty. We become performers on a stage we did not realize we had stepped onto. And the audience is not our beloved, but our own fear. Fear of failure. Fear of change. Fear of being alone. You cannot force love to behave. The more you grip it, the more it slips away. It is like holding a flame in your hand. The tighter your fist, the faster it dies. We don't talk about this much because we're afraid, because we were told that true love means permanence, that if it changes, it was never real. You see, most of us were raised to believe that real love means forever. But who said that? Where did we get this idea that if it doesn't last until death, it wasn't true? What whispered that myth into our ears so convincingly that we never stopped to question it? This is the root of so much suffering. Because the moment we believe love must be permanent to be valid, we begin to fight change. And yet, look at the universe, nothing stays the same. Galaxies spin, stars collapse, even mountains erode. The only thing that doesn't change is plastic. And we dare to think love should? When we let go of the belief that love equals forever, something incredible happens. We stop clutching. We stop demanding. Love stops being a jail and starts becoming what it always was meant to be, a freedom, a presence, a moment of shared wonder that asks for nothing but honesty. You know you're in love, not because you've made a promise, but because you feel joy in their presence. You feel the urge to protect what you love, to nurture it. You feel pain when it suffers, peace when it's near. And most of all, love reveals itself in the giving, in the watching, in the simple act of being with. But then fear creeps in, the fear of losing. And so we try to bind it, control it, freeze it in place. We confuse our need for certainty with love itself. And in doing so, we kill the very thing we meant to protect. But this simply isn't true. Love changes. It breathes. It pulses. It has its own seasons. And pretending that it doesn't is what slowly kills it. Honesty, not effort, is the lifeblood of connection. Better to say, this is how I feel now, than to pretend you still feel how you once did. To love someone truly is not to promise eternal passion. It is to promise presence. And presence only exists in truth. People work very hard to keep a marriage together. And as they do so, they may fail to recognize that they are being untrue to their own emotions. They say, I must control my feelings for the sake of the children, for the sake of society. And so they work and work. And one of the ways of working is to convince yourself that you are still in love. You go through the motions. You hypnotize yourself with loving language. You remember to buy the flowers. You keep a diary for anniversaries because forgetting would be unacceptable. You do the things you're supposed to do, and you think, this is what love must be. The performance goes on, but the presence has left the stage. And what once was alive, spontaneous and mad and beautiful has become respectable and dead. That, you see, is the tragedy. Not that love disappears, but that we pretend it hasn't. Not that we change, but that we lie about it. And in doing so, we trade the real for the role. And that, my friends, is how most marriages quietly wither not from conflict, but from pretense. You see, love is not something you can work on like a job. It is a flame. And if you try to pin it down, it dies. You cannot force a feeling to remain by obligation. And yet, this is precisely what so many marriages are built, upon a quiet, desperate pretending. And I speak not from theory, but from bitter experience. You build yourself into a wall-to-wall emotional trap, and in the background, something in you knows it's not real. You feel it, like a ghost. The true feeling, the spontaneous magic's gone, but the performance must go on. This is why the mystery dies. Not because love is gone, but because truth is. The honesty that once connected two people has been replaced by performance. And so the marriage continues respectable on the outside, but quietly crumbling within. You see, to love someone truly is not to chain them to a past feeling. It is to stand present with them every day and to say honestly, this is where I am now, and to let them do the same. That is the only kind of love worth having, the kind that breathes, the kind that changes, the kind that is free. Now let's look clearly at what people mean when they say, my husband or my wife. You see, behind that little possessive pronoun is a very old and very dangerous illusion that love means ownership. It doesn't. You do not own another human being. You do not own their soul, their body, or their attention. And the moment you try to, the whole thing begins to rot. We think that by securing someone legally, ceremonially, and socially, we somehow keep the love in place. But love, by its very nature, is free. It arises when you're not looking. It dances only when the music is real. The more you try to pin it down, the more it slips away. To say, I love you, should never mean, now you belong to me. It should mean, I choose to dance with you now, and I'll choose again tomorrow if the music still moves us. But instead we shackle it. We say, you may not change. You must continue to be who I need you to be. And when the other inevitably begins to shift us, all things must we feel betrayed. Not because they were dishonest, but because we expected permanence in a world that only offers movement. The truth is, you don't need someone to be yours. You need them to be themselves. And if they choose to share that with you, then you are blessed. But if you demand it, expect it, or require it, you have already lost it. Love is not a cage. It's not a certificate. It's not a role in a play. It is simply the freedom to see another as they are and to let them be. We must begin to imagine a different kind of relationship. One not based on obligation, but on presence. Not on permanence, but on participation. You see, love isn't something you can force to last forever by swearing to it. The moment you make it a duty, you've robbed it of its essence. Real love, like real music, happens in the moment. It is not a means to an end, it is the point itself. Now, suppose two people say to each other, let us agree not to trap one another. Let us be honest, rather than loyal to a performance. That, you see, could be the beginning of something true. Instead of saying, I will always love you, say, I will be true to how I feel. And I will respect how you feel, even when it changes, because it will change. Everything does. A marriage, if it is to be anything sacred, must be a daily meeting of two people who allow each other to be. Not a prison of promises, but a shared space of mutual freedom. And the irony, of course, is that only in freedom can love truly thrive. Only when you stop trying to hold someone do they come willingly. Only when you let go does anything real begin. Let marriage, then, be not a trap of fixed roles, but a place where two individuals meet in truth, again and again, where change is not feared, but welcome, where love is not performed, but allowed. And when it fades, as all forms do, we do not blame it for ending. We simply acknowledge that it lived, and that is enough. You see, Many of us grew up with this picture of what love and marriage should look like: forever smiles, unchanging vows, and happily ever after. But real life isn't like that. People change. Feelings shift. Circumstances evolve. And that doesn't mean something went wrong. It just means life is alive. If you've ever sat next to someone you once loved and felt the silence between you grow heavier over time, you'll understand. If you've ever tried to force the connection to stay the same when it's already moved on, you'll understand. And if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt that you're not the same person who said, "I do," years ago, then you already know the truth. Love isn't supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to be real. And real love, like all living things, needs room to breathe, to stumble, to transform. It doesn't always last in the way we imagined, but that doesn't mean it failed. Sometimes love ends, and sometimes it begins again in a new way with someone else, or even within yourself. So if you're in love, be present, be honest, don't chain it down with fear, and if you're letting go, do it with grace. Thank the love that brought you here, and know this: you are not broken. You are growing. Let love be what it truly is. A gift freely given, not a contract. Some people say awakening kills your motivation. That once you wake up and see through the game, you won't want to play anymore. And perhaps you felt that yourself. You start asking, if life is just an illusion, why bother? Why chase goals? Why work hard? Why get out of bed at all? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? To look at the world and suddenly see the shine come off. Like the prizes you once chased don't quite sparkle the way they used to. And yet, that's where many men find themselves. You've built, you've worked, you've carried the weight. But when the game no longer fools you, the question creeps in, now what? Is this awakening? Or is it the end of your drive? But that's rather like a child who discovers that hide-and-seek isn't serious business, and then declares, well then, I shan't play anymore. You see, the whole charm of a game is that it isn't serious. If it were, it would be work. And the beauty of life is very much the same. When you awaken, you don't stop living. You simply stop clutching at life. You realize it's a dance, a play, a marvelous hide-and-seek between what you think you are and what you truly are. But the ego doesn't like that kind of play. The ego wants medals, trophies, something to wave about and say, look at me. And when it fails, it collapses into self-pity. Oh no, I've lost my drive. What's really happened is quite the opposite. You've been set free from the dreary business of proving yourself, and in that freedom, the ordinary shines, walking barefoot across the floor, watching a leaf tumble through the air, each one a small miracle, if only you pause long enough to notice. Because, let's be honest, what most of us call motivation is usually nothing of the sort. It isn't energy. It's anxiety in a clever disguise. A little whisper inside that says, go on now. Achieve something, prove something, carve your initials into the universe before you vanish. So off you go, collecting medals, chasing money, buying a slightly faster car than your neighbor. Not because the doing is delightful, but because the thought of being nothing frightens you out of your skin. Curious, isn't it? You spend half your life exhausted, not for the thing itself, but to shine up this image of me. And then awakening happens. The curtain parts, the lights come up, and suddenly the actor notices the crown on his head is only paper. The whole performance, a comedy dressed as tragedy. Imagine a bird outside your window. It doesn't sing to impress you or to pass an audition. It doesn't say, listen, I've composed a new tune, I do hope you approve. It sings because singing is what a bird does. And when you awaken, life begins to move through you in just that way. Not to prove, not to compete, but simply to express itself, like a tree putting out blossoms, or a river tumbling over stone. And here is the delicious secret. Awakening is not the end of passion, it is the end of pretense. You find yourself falling in love not with trophies or achievements, but with existence itself. The laughter of your child, the sound of rain on the roof, even the ache in your bones. All of it is music you had rushed past before. And a strange realization dawns. The very troubles you once cursed are part of the rhythm. Pain and joy, loss and gain. They shape one another as valleys shape the mountains. Without shadow, light is flat. Without ache, love is shallow. This is why you are here. Not to escape the dream, but to taste it. For what kind of game would it be if you could win at once? Without risk, without surprise? The whole delight of being human is that it isn't easy. So awakening doesn't lift you out of the world. It drops you right into the thick of it. Heart open, laughing at the cosmic joke, grateful for every note in the symphony. And you see, the point was never to arrive anywhere. The point is that it's happening at all. So instead of being whipped along by fear or dragged about by ambition, a new kind of energy begins to move you. Not the restless push of must do, must win, but the effortless pull of delight. It's the difference between rowing a boat upstream until your arms ache and suddenly noticing the current is carrying you all along. Now don't mistake this for laziness. Play is not lazy. Children at play have more energy than any businessman chasing a deadline. A musician absorbed in his instrument. A craftsman shaping wood with care. A gardener lost in the rhythm of planting. All of them are moved by this other kind of fire. Not the fire of fear, but of joy. Life begins to act through you. As naturally as a tree putting out blossoms in spring. And you find you are no longer the manager, the pusher, the taskmaster. You are the expression. The river doesn't need motivation to flow. The sun doesn't get up in the morning saying, I'd better shine or else. And when you're awake, you discover you are not separate from that river, not apart from that sun. You are the same unfolding energy. And so your doing becomes like dancing. The steps are there, the rhythm is there, but it isn't forced. It's play. It's music. It's effortless. That is the energy of awakening. Not driven by the whip of should, but moved by the joy of being. And here's the marvelous joke of it all. When you stop grasping at meaning, life hands it to you everywhere. The ego thinks, if I can't be the hero, the conqueror, then what's left? But awakening flips the whole thing on its head. You begin to see that life was never asking you to conquer it, it was inviting you to join it. You discover a kind of freedom that was hiding in plain sight. The freedom to laugh at yourself, to stumble without shame, to play the game knowing full well it's a game. And from there, everything ordinary becomes radiant. Washing the dishes, walking the dog, talking nonsense with your friends. None of it is wasted, because none of it needs to be anything other than what it is. The meaning you were chasing all those years wasn't somewhere else. It was in the very act of living, unpolished, unpretentious, and already complete. Awakening doesn't take away your passion. It takes away the counterfeit fuel, fear, comparison, that restless itch to measure yourself against everyone else. When you stop treating life as a ledger to balance, life becomes lavish. You begin to notice beauty was never hiding from you. You were simply too busy chasing something else to see it. You see, the beauty of awakening isn't in having life all figured out. It's in discovering that life, just as it is, has always been unspeakably beautiful. Awakening is beautiful because it hands you back your own life. Before, you were living under a spell, pulled along by comparisons, fears, and the endless race to be enough. Awakening cracks that spell, and suddenly you can breathe. You discover that you were never missing anything, that nothing out there had the power to complete you, because what you were seeking was already in you all along. That recognition is not just relief, it's freedom. It's beautiful because it restores wonder. A child doesn't need a reason to chase fireflies. They do it because life itself is astonishing. Awakening returns you to that innocence, but with the depth of everything you've lived through. It's not naive joy, it's seasoned joy. The kind that knows pain and yet chooses to marvel anyway. It's beautiful because it softens you. Instead of clinging to control, you begin to trust. You see that even your struggles were part of the story that shaped you. And when you understand that, bitterness gives way to gratitude. What once felt like punishment reveals itself as preparation. What once looked like chaos begins to show its pattern. And above all, awakening reconnects you with the sacredness of existence itself. To be awake is to realize that life was never a problem to solve, but a mystery to behold. Every breath, every touch, every fleeting moment is a gift you don't own but are allowed to experience. Awakening doesn't make you abandon life, it makes you fall in love with it. Not because it's perfect, but because it's here, and you are here to witness it. That recognition is the gift. And the great joke is this: you don't need a reason to love it. You don't need to win at it. Being awake is simply falling in love with life over and over again for no reason at all. Like watching a bird cross the sky and suddenly feeling a gratitude so deep you can't explain it. Gratitude that the bird exists and that you exist to see it. So, awakening doesn't take you out of the world, it drops you right into the middle of it. Laughing, weeping, playing, knowing the whole time that the point was never to arrive anywhere. The point is that it's happening at all. So remember this, you are not here to prove you're alive. You are here to be alive. And once you see that, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary. To live awake is to let life hold you, instead of you holding life. It's to bow, not in resignation, but in reverence. Reverence for the sheer impossibility that you are here, that this world exists, that you get to taste it at all. And when you live that way, gratitude ceases to be something you practice. It becomes the air you breathe. You feel grateful for the good, and also grateful for the mistakes, for every wrong turn that opened a new road. Grateful even for the ones who hurt you, because without them you might never have learned to bend, to soften, to grow. You feel grateful for the arguments that taught you patience, for the failures that stripped away your pride, for the disappointments that pushed you deeper into yourself. And in the end, you feel grateful for everything, for the sky and the sea, for bread on the table and laughter in the street, grateful for traffic jams, for rain-soaked shoes, for the sheer fact that anything at all is possible, because awakening shows you this marvelous truth: nothing is wasted. Not the joy, not the sorrow, not even the foolishness. It all belongs, and it is all part of the miracle that you are here to live it.
There comes a time when even your will begins to tremble. You've been pushing for so long that you can't quite remember what it felt like not to. Every morning you wake up and there is that quiet command inside your head to try again, to improve, to hold yourself together. You tell yourself you have no choice, that stopping would mean failure, that rest must be earned,
But somewhere deep down, you can feel that you're becoming tired in a different way now. Not the tiredness that sleep fixes, but the kind that touches your bones, the kind that whispers, "Enough." Most people believe exhaustion comes from doing too much, but that's not quite true. It comes from doing what was never really yours to do. It comes from carrying identities that don't fit, from keeping promises you never actually made, from fighting to be someone you think you should be. Life was never meant to feel like constant resistance, yet somehow we've turned even peace into a project. The modern mind has made effort into a virtue. We are told that every good thing must be earned: happiness, love, rest, even awakening. You must meditate correctly, breathe correctly, forgive correctly, live correctly. But this idea of correctness is precisely what keeps you tense. You start to treat existence like an exam, checking whether you're passing or failing at being alive. And the more you check, the more life slips through your fingers. There's a story I like about a man who went to a wise teacher and said, "I want to be at peace." The teacher smiled and said, "Drop the I, that's ego. Drop the want, that's desire. What's left?" The man sat in silence for a long while. What was left was peace itself. You see, it's not that you don't know how to rest. It's that you've forgotten that resting doesn't require permission. The tree doesn't negotiate with the wind before it sways. The river doesn't ask if it's flowing correctly. Only the human mind questions its right to be at ease. When you've been trying for too long, your own being begins to rebel. That rebellion doesn't come as anger or loudness. It comes as numbness, as disinterest, as quiet fatigue. The body begins to slow down. The spirit stops answering your ambitions, and everything feels dull. You call it burnout, but it's really honesty. It's life saying, "I cannot pretend anymore." And yet, even here, the habit to strive continues. You start to think, "I must recover quickly," or "I'll rest just enough to go back to working hard again." But true rest isn't preparation for more effort. True rest is the recognition that effort was never needed. You have been breathing life as though it were a job. You've been trying to keep the rhythm going, believing that if you stop, something terrible will happen. But life has been breathing you all along. When you stop forcing, the breath continues. When you stop controlling, the heart still beats. This is the beginning of understanding that trying is not the same as living. There's a strange beauty in realizing that you don't have to keep the world spinning. It spins on its own. You don't have to hold everything together. The universe already knows how. Think about a flower. It does not strain to bloom. It doesn't calculate when to open. It feels the warmth of the sun, and something inside it simply unfolds. That's what you are not the one making things happen, but the one being unfolded by life itself. So when you find yourself exhausted but unable to stop trying, you can begin by simply watching the trying. Don't try to quit trying, just notice it. Watch how the mind says, "Keep moving, keep fixing, keep improving," and see it as a habit, not a truth. In that watching, something miraculous happens. Awareness itself begins to rest. You realize that effort is a kind of resistance, a way of saying, "Life, you are not yet good enough." But what if life never needed to be improved? What if the moment you stop resisting it, it already becomes perfect, not in the moral sense, but in the whole sense? Trying to perfect life is like polishing a wave. The more you touch it, the more it scatters. When you stop meddling, the surface of the water becomes clear again, and in that clarity, you finally see what was always there, yourself, not as a worker or a seeker or a struggler, but as awareness itself. Awareness is effortless. It doesn't need to maintain itself. It doesn't wake up in the morning and say, "I must continue being aware." It simply is. And that's the truth of who you are. You are not the effort, you are the space in which effort happens. The exhaustion you feel isn't a failure. It's a doorway. It's the body's way of guiding you home. It says, come back, stop running. Nothing is chasing you. And when you listen to that invitation, something shifts quietly inside. The muscles unclench. The breath deepens. The mind stops asking what comes next. For a few brief moments, you're not a project, not a person trying to become. And when you listen to that invitation, something shifts quietly inside. The muscles unclench. The breath deepens. The mind stops asking what comes next. For a few brief moments, you're not a project, not a person trying to become. You're simply being. And that simple being, unadorned and unforced, is what you've been searching for all along. You don't have to earn rest. You are made of it. You don't have to deserve peace. You are already peace, temporarily disguised as a tired human being trying to remember where it went. When you understand that, the world doesn't need to change for you to rest. The circumstances don't have to improve. The people around you don't need to behave differently. You just have to stop holding your breath long enough to remember that life is not waiting for you to catch up. It has been carrying you the entire time. The beauty of surrender is that nothing actually stops. Everything continues, but without strain. You still work, you still love, you still face challenges, but they flow through you instead of against you. You begin to act from ease rather than toward it. And that, perhaps, is the quiet secret of all spiritual exhaustion. It isn't a curse. It's the universe's way of making you tired of pretending that you are in control. There's a moment that comes after long fatigue when even thought becomes soft. The voice that once urged you forward begins to lose its conviction. It still speaks, but its words don't land quite the same way. You should be doing more, it says. But it sounds almost tired of hearing itself. You start to notice the absurdity of how long you've been obeying it. You remember the countless times you pushed yourself because you believed something waited at the end of the road, the perfect day, the perfect peace, the perfect version of yourself. But the further you went, the more you realized there was no finish line, only a looping horizon. Every goal melted into the next one, and the moment you reached what you thought would be relief, your mind whispered, just one more step. You see, the game of self-improvement never ends because it feeds on its own dissatisfaction. It survives by convincing you that who you are right now is not enough. And as long as you believe that voice, you will never rest, not even for a breath. So the first act of wisdom is not to conquer that voice, but to recognize it for what it is, habit. It is not life itself. It is the echo of a world that believes worth is measured by motion. Every culture has its myth of progress. In the modern one, progress became a moral duty. We build faster machines, we write longer lists, we measure success by the number of things done rather than the depth with which anything was lived. Even spirituality was infected by this fever. Meditation became another race, another ladder to climb. But awareness does not improve through struggle. It simply notices. The moment you see the trap, you are already free from it. Try this sometime. Sit for a few minutes and allow yourself to do nothing. Don't even call it meditation. Just sit. You'll notice almost immediately how the mind resists. It says, I should be using this time. I should be productive. Watch that urge as if it belonged to a stranger. You'll see that effort is not your nature, it's conditioning. When you stop obeying it, something ancient begins to breathe again inside you, the quiet intelligence of rest. Look at animals. They don't rest because they've finished their to-do list. They rest because the sun is warm, because the moment invites them. They act when there is movement, and they lie still when there isn't. That rhythm, that effortless alignment with the pulse of existence, is what humans once knew before they became afraid of stillness. To be still in this world is to appear useless, and nothing terrifies the ego more than uselessness. It thrives on proving itself. Yet usefulness is temporary, while being is eternal. When you let go of the need to prove your worth, you begin to rediscover wonder. You see how much of life you've missed by trying to justify your place in it. The color of the sky, the sound of your own breathing, the subtle hum of aliveness that has always been present, these return when striving subsides. And in that rediscovery, gratitude awakens. Not the kind you list in a journal, but the kind that happens wordlessly, like a flower opening at dawn. You don't say, "I am grateful." You simply feel the quiet joy of existence. That joy does not depend on success or progress. It arises from the simple permission to be. When you understand that, even tiredness feels different. You no longer resent it. You let the body rest, the mind drift, and you see that exhaustion was never your enemy, it was your teacher. It came to show you the limits of control. It came to whisper, "Now, stop, you've done enough." You see, effort is not wrong. It's just not meant to be permanent. It's a wave that must fall back into the ocean. The problem begins when we try to hold the wave in place, when we try to live in perpetual crest. Life breathes in and out. There are times for expansion and times for surrender. The wise person does not cling to one or the other. They move with the rhythm as a dancer moves with the music. When you finally allow yourself to stop, you may feel fear at first. The silence can seem heavy. The stillness may feel like a void. But if you stay long enough, you realize the void isn't empty, it's full. Full of everything you were too busy to notice. Full of the pulse of being, the quiet hum of awareness itself. And then the most natural thing happens, energy returns. But now it flows differently. It no longer burns from tension, it moves from ease. You begin to act without forcing. Things get done, not through pushing, but through participation. You are no longer the worker dragging the load, you are the current carrying the boat. This is what the Taoists meant by Wu Wei, action without effort, movement without strain. It isn't laziness, it's precision. It's the intelligence of water flowing exactly where it needs to go. So when you feel that you cannot stop trying, do not fight it. See it, smile at it. Let the exhaustion do its work on you. Let it soften your pride. Let it show you how unnecessary most of your inner battles were. Eventually you will find that you can rest even while moving, that effort itself can become ease. And when that happens, life stops feeling like something to manage. It becomes something to experience. You realize that rest was never the reward at the end of the path, it was the path itself. The truth is beautifully simple. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be carried. You are allowed to be ordinary, unaccomplished, unfinished, and still completely whole. When you finally believe that, exhaustion turns to peace. And peace is what you were trying to find by working so hard all along. There's a peculiar lightness that appears when the struggle finally dissolves. You wake up one morning and realize that the world hasn't changed, but your grip on it has loosened. The same work waits on the table. The same people expect your attention. The same sounds move through the day. Yet, something invisible is gone, that constant sense of being late to your own life. This is what true rest feels like. Not absence of motion, but absence of resistance. The river still flows, the seasons still turn, but now you are moving with them instead of against them. You begin to notice that life was never meant to be wrestled into submission. It was meant to be danced with. When you stop pulling, it stops pulling back. It's strange how this understanding arrives. It doesn't come from new knowledge, but from finally growing tired of your own tension. You no longer need to convince life to cooperate. You start to trust that it already knows where to go. And in that trust, something ancient begins to return, the natural rhythm that was always beneath the noise. You eat when hungry, sleep when tired, speak when words come, stay silent when they don't. It feels simple, almost childlike, as if the universe has taken over the task of living. The mind doesn't like this at first. It's too quiet. It doesn't have metrics for ease. It asks, Am I doing it right? And life replies, there's nothing to do right. There's only what's happening. When you understand that, even your problems begin to breathe. They stop being heavy walls and start becoming passing weather. You don't deny them. You just stop identifying with them. You realize that you were never the storm. You were the sky. And the sky doesn't get tired of holding the clouds. It just lets them move. You start to see that exhaustion was never the problem, control was. You were never tired from doing too much. You were tired from trying to dictate how things should be. The effort to control is subtle. It hides inside even the most noble intentions. You try to control your emotions so that you can be spiritual, your image so that you can be loved, your destiny so that you can feel safe. But the more you try, the further you drift from the effortless intelligence that has been guiding life since the beginning. Look at the trees again. They don't manage their growth. They don't consult a plan before sprouting. Their perfection lies in their lack of strategy. They trust the soil, the rain, the sun. They let the universe grow them. And this, you see, is what the universe is doing with you. You are being grown. All the strain, all the seeking, all the fatigue, they were not mistakes, but growing pains. You were learning to let life do what it does best. You were learning to stop pretending that you are separate from its flow. Once this is seen, the world begins to look softer. You no longer judge people for being asleep or awake, strong or weak, disciplined or chaotic. You see that everyone is simply being lived by the same current, each at their own pace, each in their own shape. The need to compare dissolves, the envy fades, the guilt quiets, because now you understand that nobody is behind and nobody is ahead. There is no race. When that realization sinks in, gratitude rushes in like air into lungs that have been held too long. You start to love again, not in the sentimental way, but as a quiet recognition that everything belongs. You find beauty in the ordinary, the way sunlight touches the sink, the sound of a kettle boiling, the tired laugh of a stranger on the bus. These small things were always holy. You were just too busy chasing bigger ones to notice. This is what rest does. It restores vision. You begin to see that the sacred was never elsewhere. It was in the pauses between thoughts, in the stillness between breaths, in the overlooked simplicity of existing. And because you finally stop rushing, life starts to show you its secret patterns. You begin to see how even the difficult moments were part of your unfolding. The heartbreaks, the failures, the sleepless nights, none of them wasted. Each was carving space for something deeper to grow. There's a softness that comes with seeing this, a tenderness toward everything you once resisted. You stop dividing your experience into good and bad. It's all movement now, all expression. Rest becomes your natural state, not because you avoid work or silence your ambition, but because you finally see that even effort can be effortless when it flows from being. When you cook, you simply cook. When you speak, you simply speak. When you rest, you truly rest. Nothing stands in the way. It's not that life becomes easier, it becomes truer. The most surprising part of this transformation is that it doesn't make you passive, it makes you alive. You act more clearly because you are no longer acting from fear. You create, but not to prove anything. You help others, not because you should, but because the impulse to give rises naturally from peace. You realize that when you were striving, you were actually trying to find permission to live. And now that permission has been given not by the world, but by your own awareness. The irony is beautiful. You spent years trying to reach a place that was never absent. The one who was seeking rest was made of rest all along. That understanding doesn't require effort to maintain. Once seen, it sustains itself. And so, you walk differently now. You breathe differently. Even your tiredness feels sacred. You know that when fatigue comes again, it's not punishment. It's just another reminder to pause and return. The world continues to move fast, chaotic, demanding. But within you, there is a still point, a place untouched by hurry, a place that whispers, all is well, even when it isn't. That's the gift exhaustion came to give you. Not weakness, but wisdom. The wisdom of remembering that you don't have to be the one doing life. Life is doing you, and it's doing it beautifully.
When a man starts to wake up, he naturally pulls away from the crowd. Not because he hates people, but because the usual way of connecting stops making sense. Most conversations revolve around status, gossip, or complaints. And once he begins to see through that, it gets harder to engage. He's not bitter. He's not isolating himself out of pride. He's just stopped chasing what others are still chasing. He starts to notice the performance in everyday interaction, the need to be liked, to belong, to say the right thing. And without making a big deal about it, he quietly steps back. People might still wave. They might still offer small talk. But the connection is no longer there, because it was never real to begin with. He didn't cut ties, he didn't burn bridges. He simply stopped pretending. And when he does that, distance happens on its own. This is the beginning of solitude, not loneliness, just space between who he used to be and who he's becoming. He starts to see clearly what holds people together isn't real. It's not depth, it's not truth. It's habit, comfort, and shared illusions. People bond over complaining about their jobs, over chasing status, over defending ideas they've never truly questioned. He used to do the same. He used to think that was connection. But now it feels more like noise. He notices how often people speak, just to avoid silence. How much energy goes into keeping up appearances. The constant need for validation, for agreement, for reassurance. And once he no longer needs those things himself, he sees how dependent others are on them. How relationships often survive not because of honesty, but because everyone agrees to keep the story going. He understands why people hold on to what feels familiar. He still cares. He still listens, but he no longer plays along. That shift, subtle as it is, creates distance all on its own. From the outside, he might seem the same. He still shows up. He's still polite. He hasn't disappeared completely. But something fundamental has shifted, and the people around him can feel it, even if they can't name it. They sense that he's no longer trying to impress anyone, that he's not looking for approval, that he's not playing the social game anymore. Some find it admirable, others find it unsettling, because he's no longer easy to read, because he's not performing for anyone. He doesn't flatter, doesn't compete, doesn't entertain, and that makes him hard to place. People might say he's distant, or too quiet, or that he's changed. What they really mean is, he no longer fits into the roles they've grown used to. They liked him better when he reflected their values. Now, he reflects something else, something still, grounded, and not dependent on being liked. People see him, but they don't really know him, because knowing him now would require them to see what he sees, and most people aren't ready for that. He once believed that staying connected meant staying involved, showing up, participating in conversations, maintaining appearances. But with time, that definition changed. As his priorities shifted inward, he stopped engaging out of obligation, not because he cared less, but because he no longer needed others to affirm his place in the world. He still values connection, but not if it depends on constant engagement, emotional performance, or subtle negotiation for approval. He doesn't withdraw out of resentment. He simply no longer finds value in maintaining relationships built on pretense or expectation. To those accustomed to transactional connection, his presence can feel distant. But in truth, he's simply not playing the same role anymore. He no longer speaks just to keep the peace. He no longer sees himself through other people's eyes. What emerges in that space is not loneliness, but clarity. A calm independence that allows him to remain rooted even when others come and go. He's become honest, and from that honesty, a deeper kind of freedom begins to take shape. From the outside, solitude is often misunderstood. To most people, being alone signals a lack of friends, of purpose, of belonging. But for a man who has begun to see clearly, solitude becomes something else entirely. He no longer fills his time with distractions, just to avoid being alone with himself. He no longer seeks out constant company to escape discomfort. He's learned to sit in silence without needing it to end. What others describe as loneliness is often just unfamiliar stillness. They equate the absence of noise with emptiness. He's realized that most of what fills a typical day, talks, tasks, and duties, is just noise pretending to be important. In solitude, he sees himself without distortion. There's no one to impress, no image to maintain, and that clarity, while uncomfortable at first, becomes a source of strength. He doesn't avoid people, but he also no longer depends on them to feel complete. This shift usually confuses others. They assume he must be withdrawn, disconnected, or even arrogant. But in truth, he's simply content with his own presence. He has faced the silence most people run from and discovered it wasn't silence at all. It was peace. As he grows more inwardly stable, he becomes less predictable to others. Not by intent, but by the simple fact that he no longer participates in the subtle exchanges that define most social interaction. He does not mirror emotions to gain approval. He does not offer reassurance when it would mean denying what he sees. To those still dependent on external validation, this creates discomfort. They may interpret his neutrality as arrogance, his silence as judgment, his detachment as disinterest. In reality, he is none of those things. He's simply no longer invested in managing perception. Much of what people call connection is actually a performance, a mutual agreement to keep certain illusions intact. Once he steps outside that arrangement, he disrupts it just by being present. He doesn't argue or provoke or attempt to convert anyone to his view. But the absence of familiar signals, approval, flattery, emotional reinforcement, makes others uneasy. Many of his previous friendships begin to fade, not because of conflict, but because the foundation they stood on no longer holds. He begins to notice how often relationships are maintained through shared complaints, routine habits, or the mutual reinforcement of personal narratives. Once he no longer participates in those patterns, the connection weakens on its own. He no longer feels compelled to offer agreement for the sake of belonging. He no longer entertains conversations that avoid substance, and he has no interest in maintaining ties that require him to shrink himself. This shift is not a rejection of others. It's the result of a change in what he's willing to invest his energy in. True friendship becomes something quieter, simpler, and far more rare. It is no longer based on shared illusions, but on mutual recognition. Two people who don't need each other, yet choose to walk alongside one another without expectation. These kinds of connections cannot be manufactured. They emerge naturally, if at all, and only when both individuals have stopped seeking to be completed by the other. Most social interaction relies on unspoken rules. You validate my perspective, I'll validate yours. We won't go too deep. We won't challenge each other's assumptions. We'll pretend we agree, even if we don't. He used to play by those rules because everyone did. But once he starts operating outside of them, the dynamic begins to break down. He no longer gives comfort just to ease tension. He doesn't pretend to agree when he doesn't. He's done with the little acts that keep everyone else feeling safe, but keep him feeling false. This isn't defiance, it's clarity. And that clarity is disruptive because it exposes how much of everyday life is based on mutual avoidance of truth. People notice, even if they don't understand what's changed. They feel the shift. They sense that something familiar has gone missing. The constant exchange of comfort, validation, and distraction. And without him feeding the system weakens. Talks start to feel awkward. People stop reaching out as much. What used to feel warm and familiar now feels tense and uneasy. Not because he did something wrong, but because he stopped playing along. He hasn't rejected anyone. He simply stopped reinforcing a structure he no longer believes in. As his understanding deepens, something unexpected happens. He begins to need less, not just materially, but emotionally, socially, even intellectually. He no longer seeks recognition. He no longer relies on others to confirm what he already knows internally. And as that need dissolves, so do many of the relationships that once required it. This is the paradox. The clearer he becomes, the quieter his life becomes. Not because he's closed off, but because so much of what once filled his time was rooted in a search for external affirmation. Without that search, most social activity feels optional, if not unnecessary. He stops trying to be understood. He stops needing to explain. He no longer measures his presence by how much space he takes up in other people's lives. From the outside, this might look like withdrawal, but inside it's the opposite, a settling into something solid and real. He still values connection, but only when it emerges naturally, without demand or performance. He hasn't become cold. He is simply no longer dependent. And in that detachment, there's a kind of depth that can't be found through attachment. Once he wakes up, he can't unsee what he sees. He looks inward, and the noise quiets. He looks outward, and the world is still asleep. He sees the false certainty in people's eyes, the roles they perform, the beliefs they never question, the constant movement that masks an inner stillness they haven't touched. He no longer envies what others call connection, because he understands the cost it often demands: agreement, performance, conformity, and he won't trade truth for the comfort of fitting in. Still, there's a part of him that remembers, a part that quietly hopes, not for crowds, not for company, but for someone awake, someone who has seen what he's seen, felt what he's felt, someone who doesn't need him to be smaller, quieter, or more agreeable in order to feel safe. That kind of meeting is rare. It can't be forced, and he would rather wait in silence than pretend in conversation. So he walks alone, not because he enjoys being apart, but because in a world still dreaming, authenticity is more valuable than acceptance. At some point, the solitude stops feeling unusual. It becomes normal, not empty, just quiet. He no longer interprets distance as a problem to solve. He sees it for what it is, the natural result of no longer pretending. While others surround themselves with noise, he has learned to live in stillness. While many chase attention, he moves without asking to be seen. People often assume he must feel lonely, as if company, any company, is always better than walking alone. But they confuse isolation with absence. He is not absent. He is simply no longer performing. He has come to prefer the space that honesty creates over the closeness that illusion demands. This is the final shift. He doesn't need the world to wake up for him to feel whole. He doesn't need agreement to feel clear. And he doesn't need validation to know who he is. He walks alone, yes, but not as an outsider, as a man at peace with the cost of truth.